Hi, my name is Monika Wahi, and welcome to my lecture, How to Find Objective News Articles on Health Topics. Learning Objectives. After watching this video, the learner should be able to describe one method of searching Google News for health topics, list two ways to tell an objective news article from a non-article, and state an example of a source that would not be appropriate to use for a health essay under any circumstances. All right, so what am I going to do? I'm going to show you how to search Google News to find health-related articles. And then I'm going to show you how to try and figure out whether it's an objective news article or not. You probably don't know what those clues are, but I'm going to explain them. And then finally, I'm going to just make a point about considering the source. The point is that objective news articles aren't the only things that you should cite when doing essays, but you need to know the difference between those and opinion articles. And you also need to know if you are using a source that is so bad that you shouldn't be using it. So that's what we're going to cover. So articles, objective news articles, here are some attributes of them. They are always by a reporter, but that's a little deceptive because reporters also write other things. They always have the 5 W's and H right away in the first paragraph. And you know what those are? Who, what, why, where, when, and how. Immediately that information is presented right away at the top of the article. In opinion articles, sometimes some of those are there, but all of them aren't at the top usually, because opinion articles are meant for you to sit back and think. And news articles, fast-breaking objective news articles, is to get the news out. What you also want to do is look at the URL, the address in the address bar if you're going to a online newspaper, because often online newspapers will have blogs like the New York Times, and they'll have the word blog in the URL, but it may not say actually blog on the screen. So look in that URL. If you see blog, blog is not an objective news article or opinion or anything like that. So that can be a clue. Also, just sort of look at the screen or look at the newspaper you're holding in your hand. If the words essay, analysis, and opinion are on there, then it's not an objective news article. Like you'll often watch TV shows where they'll have a news analysis. They're discussing the news. That's like a audio visual version of written news analyses, which are not objective news articles. So if you see essay, analysis, opinion, or editorial, not objective news article. What the objective news article is all about is like fast breaking news. Like remember Kermit the Frog on Sesame Street? That was all objective news reporting because it was fast breaking. It was like either a Muppet did something or, something happened on Sesame Street, Snuffleupagus, maybe Big Bird, and it was always fast breaking. Okay, now let's look at I call them non-articles. Maybe that's not a great word for them, but I didn't know of the right word for anything that's not an objective news article. Because anything that's not an objective news article isn't necessarily bad. It's just something else. And you just need to know whether you have one or not. So non-articles, as I'll call them in this lecture, they could be by a reporter. Reporters write blogs, they write opinions, they're very smart people. But also the key is if you see that this article is not written by a reporter, like it's a CEO, a doctor, a mom, a professor, but they're not a reporter, they're just writing from their heart, that is not reporting. That is an opinion or an analysis or some letter to the editor or something. So that is not an objective news article. Also, a lot of times my students seem to gravitate more towards non-articles. They read nice. They read like an analysis or an opinion. They read more like essays, and there are pictures and there are charts. And that's not how objective news articles read. They're very fast breaking, fact, 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 fact. And so sometimes my students don't even really like them as much. But that's, if you find yourself actually enjoying reading, it's just relaxing, be careful. You might be reading an analysis or an opinion or just some research or something that's not actually an objective news article. Again, I said to look in the URL. Also look for keywords like opinion or editorial. And also, if it obviously expresses an opinion about something that may be new or not so new, then it's an analysis. So if you've got a person who's maybe pulling together all the information about medication errors, that have happened over the last 6 months or something like that. That's new and not so new. So that wouldn't be, that would likely be a non-article. However, if like a new medication error just happened yesterday, it was a big deal, and you go read about it and you see 5 W's and an H right away, I would suspect that that actually would be an objective news article. So how do we start by going out to look for objective news articles? Well, we start at Google News. So we'll go news.google.com. And what you'll see coming up for news is timely, like within the last month or so. If you want to search old news, you have to go to a different part of Google News. So when you get there, this is what you see. You see what's hot now. If I came back here in a minute, it might be different. You see the top stories trending over here. I'm in Boston, so this shows up. And you see a lot of categories here, and you know the one I want, health. All right. Now what you're going to see is a bunch of articles related to health. Some of them are not articles, like they're not objective news, they're opinion, but a lot of them you'll see are objective news, and you'll see a lot of them from popular newspapers. So here we go. We'll just scroll down a few until we get to something popular. Oh, here's the Huffington Post. Now that's a little tricky, so we're going to go to the Huffington Post here. This looks like news, doesn't it? Some parts of the U.S. still have unacceptably low vaccination rates. But let's just wait a second. Unacceptably low? That sounds like an opinion. And I love the Huffington Post, and it doesn't pretend to be a newspaper. It says it's a blog. So one of the things you have to keep in mind is every single article in the Huffington Post is not an objective news article. It may be high quality, it's just not an objective one. So when we look at this one, we won't be surprised if we see opinion from the author's mouth, like this unacceptable. So let's see here. In some states, see, this reads a lot like an objective news article, but just knowing it's from the Huffington Post, that they don't try to follow that, you should know that that's then not objective news. But there are other things, like see a pair of twins hear their mom for the first time. Well, that's more of a human interest story. Let's see if what we get over there. And again, these things aren't obvious, and I'm just showing you real things that are hard to classify, so you can see exactly how hard to classify it is. This appears to be objective news, even though it's all cute. Who, what, why, where, they're all there. I'm going to close this before this video starts launching. So sometimes it'll look like you don't have objective news, but you really do. This one's pretty obvious. This has got to be objective news. It's not only from a news organization, Fox, but it's talking about something that just happened, which is the CDC just reported this. And this is an emergency, so you better listen to this. Contact lens wearers should avoid swimming and showering with the lenses still in. Aren't you glad our CDC is like on it? Okay, so emergency, cut that out. Now, you will see that even though this is an objective news article, there is an opinion in it, but that opinion is expressed by South Bend eye doctor Linnea Robbins Winters, who was somebody who was interviewed by this reporter who is writing the story. So you're getting a lot of these clues that this is an objective news story from that. That's why I'm pointing this out. And so in objective news articles, if there is any opinion, it's because somebody's quoted in the story. It's not from the author's opinion, which is like unacceptably sort of the author's opinion. All right. Oh, one last thing is sometimes you may want to look for a particular newspaper. You can always do that, only you would do it in the search here. This would search news, and you kind of will lose the health thing. So let's say we're looking for something New York, Times, something in the New York Times, and let's say health insurance. Let's see if something's there on that. Oh, what a surprise. Tardy tax filers risk loss of health care subsidies. So you actually can find, some articles in the specific newspaper for your topic. So at the end of this exercise, I'm just going to remind you to look for the clues for objective news articles. First, look for familiar reporters, like reporters who are always reporting on especially health news. And you'll get used to that if you keep reading about health news. Also look for objective news, no opinion. If you can see opinion expressed by the reporter or the author of the actual news piece, then it's an opinion and it's not objective news. And also, if the headline says so and so just released a report, or a drug was just approved, or a study was just completed. It's probably fast breaking news, objective news like Kermit the Frog does. So that's a way, if you're looking for objective news, you can kind of steer that direction. If you're looking for news analysis, look more for not quite fast breaking news. Like you'll even notice when something really horrible happens in the news, the first reports that come out just have the facts. And as the week goes on, people start doing more analyses because they're sitting back and thinking about them. And that's just how it goes. Now, I have repeated throughout this lecture that non objective news sources are really good, like the Huffington Post. It's just that you want to make sure that you know the difference. What you also want to make sure you know the difference between is a non-source, like a source you should not be using in your essays. And the reason why I put this up is because somebody actually did that in my class. Notice this is an advertisement, okay? Anything about the sugar industry and on here is an advertisement. Okay, that is not a blog. That is not, I mean, it's just an advertisement. So please be choosy. If you go to even a blog where they're just saying gobbledygook, or that you go to some crazy person who's trying to sell you some sort of crazy health thing like this is, that's just not going to be cool. And how you know that's not going to be cool is if somebody's reading your essay and they go, oh, this is interesting about sugar, and they come here, you're going to look like a fool. So just evaluate your sources. Just because they're on Google News might not mean that they're good. Click on it, look at it. If it looks like this, move on past. So, in conclusion, when writing an essay, you need to use a reputable and credible source, like I just yelled at you about, regardless of whether it's an objective news article or not. So, regardless of whether you're at the Huffington Post or you're at the New York Times on their objective news page or on their blog page, you always want to find reputable sources and not use like advertisements. But nevertheless, objective news articles are different than non articles. They deliberately avoid presenting an opinion, whereas non articles are there for an opinion. So you need to be able to tell them apart. And it is hard. It used to be a lot easier before the internet because newspapers would be printed and they'd be organized into sections and people would follow that. The reporters would follow that and the readers would follow that. Now everything's mixed together on the internet, and sometimes when reporters are writing a blog, it sounds very newsy, but it's actually opinion. And it even is hard for me to tell apart. But there are clues that can guide you that I shared with you in this lecture. And I hope this helps. Have fun writing your essays.